That kind of was our opportunity, and we made a big splash. We were able to close on about 1,500 multifamily. Now it's a completely different ballgame, right? We could spend a whole episode just talking about the changes the last 4 years in commercial real estate. It's been no simple market to navigate, and it still isn't. But in the peaks and the valleys are opportunities.
Welcome to Spur Equity's Spur Your Wealth podcast, your ultimate guide to passive income through real estate investing. Join us as we together discover the secrets of building wealth one passive investment at a time.
From expert insights to inspiring success stories, this podcast will inspire you and empower you to take control of your family's financial future so you can live life on your own terms.
All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Spur Equity's Spur Your Wealth podcast. We are your hosts today, but I'm Singh and Rav Singh from Spur Equity. So on the Spur Your Wealth podcast, we aim to bring successful investors and experts and thought leaders on the podcast to share their story and secrets in investing so we can all stand to benefit from their experience. So on today's episode, we are fortunate enough to have entrepreneur investor Logan Freeman. Logan, with over 6 years of dynamic real estate experience, he's executed over $300 million in acquisitions for his firm, FTW Investments, and as the head of acquisitions for a prior investment fund. Logan is also the managing broker at Exchange CRE. It's a boutique commercial real estate brokerage firm specializing in 1031 transactions. A lot of our investors are very familiar with 1031. We'll get into that a little bit as well. So leveraging his unique blend of people skills and transactional experience, Logan is a driving force behind acquisitions, capital raising, and investor relations, and serves as a voting member of the firm's investment committee. So welcome, Logan. We are so happy to have you on the Spur Your Wealth podcast today. Really looking forward to the conversation today. We have a lot of topics that I know that you can dive into, but really welcome to the show.
Yeah, well, thanks you guys for having me. I feel blessed to be here and be able to share insights and lessons learned along the way, because I think that's one of the most important things. And as entrepreneurs, I mean, if you don't put yourself out there, you're not going to fail. But if you fail and learn, how is that really a failure? So I always say it's win or learn, not win or lose. And if you take that mindset, you can become better, and you can become a better investor, a better, parent, husband, wife, whatever it is that you're working on. So my goal every day, simply beat the guy that I was yesterday. So I'm excited to be here. Hopefully I can drop some knowledge to your valued listeners that they might found worthy of being here. So thank you.
I'm sure. I mean, you've already done it, right? So this is something that Rav and I believe wholeheartedly, that it comes from action, right? Everything comes from action, and you're absolutely right. It's win or learn. One of the things that Rav and I say often is, we jumped into this not knowing a lot of the things that you need to know when you're doing this business, but we learned along the way. And what we did was, I call fail forward, right? So we may not have done it the best way the first time out of the gate, but we learned along the way. And guess what? With real estate, we failed forward because we still made good money. We still made good returns, but we learned some valuable lessons along the way that we could apply to the next one and the next one and the next one. And so that's what it's all about. Even as a seasoned expert, or you call ourselves, let's say, seasoned experts, we're still learning from each other. And that's what this podcast is all about. So awesome. Great to have you, Logan. So as we kick it off, I know that our investors and listeners can draw a lot of inspiration from your story. So why don't you take a few minutes and kind of share a little bit about your background and your story and your journey, so people can get to know a little bit about, where you're coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I grew up in a Midwestern town called Jefferson City, and most folks do not know what the capital of Missouri is, but it is Jefferson City. And I always categorize or kind of mark Jefferson City in one way, and it was after reading Carol Dweck's book Mindset. right? She basically said there's two mindsets out there. You've got the fixed mindset, which is, hey, this is kind of how it's been and how it's going to be, or the growth mindset, which is, hey, this is how it's been, but if I make strategic changes and or put myself in different positions, the outcome can be different. And Jefferson City was very much a great place to grow up. My mom still lives there, and but I would say that they definitely have that town just has kind of the fixed mindset. And I'm not being derogatory towards that term. It's just the way that it is, and it's a great place to live and raise a family. However, growing up, I always saw my mom working two jobs, and I didn't really know why. Right? It's like, why do you have to work two jobs and trade time for dollars and put food on the table? And everybody else's parents are only working one job, right? Well, it's because she was trying to work herself, or at least for us, out of that fixed mindset, provide us something maybe that she didn't have. And I think she was very successful in that, right? At least in the mindset that I have adopted. And so, growing up, I was 14 years old. I'm a big guy, 6'2", 250 pounds. And I said, look, I think I can go make some money. Well, what do you do in the Midwest? Well, it's a hot summers. You go out in the fields and you start, baling hay. You start picking up hay bales and you put them on the back of a trailer. So I was 14 years old in the hay fields. And then I begged, bargained, and pleaded a catering business that was next to my house to hire me. And so I had to go to school and I had to get a report card that said, hey, you got to keep your grades above this and all these different things. And so I had two jobs when I was 14 years old. When I was 15 years old, I started a Roth IRA. And I think when I went to that financial planner office, he was looking at me like, I don't really have a whole lot of 15-year-olds in here opening Roth IRAs, but I was in Financial Freedom University by Dave Ramsey at school in personal finance, thinking that that was the way that I would make myself better and set myself up for success. And so, that was kind of something that really resonated with me early on was, I work hard and I make money. However, I did that a lot in many different aspects of my life, athletics being another one. And I had the opportunity to play collegiate football and get a scholarship, which was something I needed to be able to go to school. I think that, in 2008, it was a little bit different mindset of going to school. I know people were taking out loans, and certainly I had to as well. But those were things that we were taught that you weren't supposed to be doing, right? Taking on debt. We didn't have credit cards. They were debit cards. Cell phones, I didn't get one until I was 15 or 16 years old, and so it was a little bit of a different ideology kind of growing up. And so taking on debt was not something that was really interested in. So I always had a job through college. I was always working in the summers, either doing construction or, baling hay or working at the catering business. And so, let's fast forward a little bit, had a very successful career academically and athletically on the football field, and was able to be picked up as an undrafted free agent with the Oakland Raiders. And so I had the opportunity to go out there and I beat a couple guys out that they drafted and changed positions a couple times. Ultimately, I was cut from the team. And a theme in my story is kind of decision points. And one of these decision points was, do I want to continue this pursuit of athletics? And I felt that higher calling had me going in different directions. The passion was not there. The fire was not there. I had the opportunity to continue on with the 49ers, but I said no. At the NFL Combine, I was 335 pounds as an offensive lineman. Less than 6 months later, I went back to school, finished my master's degree, put myself through my master's program by pouring concrete, because when you're an undrafted free agent and no scholarship, you have to pay for school. And long story short, went back to school, finished up my master's degree. During my master's degree, I was able to, in 6 months, lose over 100 pounds. I also had a job making 265 cold calls per day because I was getting a master's in business administration, yet I had done no business. I had done all physical labor. So I said, well, let me go get on the phones and be a salesperson and get told no 264 times out of the day. But here's the big change. Yes, I changed physically, but mentally, this is pre-podcast, believe it or not. This is pre-podcast. It was CDs. I had Tony Robbins. I had Zig Ziglar. I had Brian Tracy. I had all of these guys' CDs that I had found in an old bookstore. I would listen to them on the way to this job and on the way back, and then I'd go to school at night. And then I'd spend 10 to 12 hours in the library on Saturdays getting caught back up. And the bigger change in my life was something that happened with my mind, and opened up my mind listening to or reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, reading and listening to Lewis Howes' School of Greatness and John Lee Dumas' Entrepreneur on Fire, because those were a couple of the only podcasts that were really around back then. And I said, man, there's a different way. I graduated still wondering what business was. And now I understand what it is. But at the end of the day, I didn't really understand that until I was selling, and I was marketing, and I was communicating with value with individuals. We have a product, we have a service. We're trying to sell it to you because we think it brings you value. A couple other decision points happened in my life during this period of time. My father had always struggled with drugs and alcohol, and the same time when I was graduating, he came up to help me move out of my apartment in college, my MBA program. And, I could tell something was wrong with him, and his health started to decline rapidly. Less than 2 weeks later, my father passed away. And so you could think, I'm a 24-year-old man, boy at the time, still learning a lot, but no longer a football player, lost 100 pounds, got this identity shift happening in my mind. Physically, it happened as well. And then my dad passes away. So it was just this huge, amalgamation of events that really got me thinking about, man, what do I want my future to look like? And so I had landed a job as the youngest franchise consultant that Jimmy John's ever hired. So basically, he had 25 stores between Iowa, Altoona, Iowa. Rav, you would know where that's at. Own some real estate up there now, so that's kind of cool. But it was Iowa, Arkansas, Missouri, and Kansas. And I rose through the ranks. I was there for about a year, and they said, what's my next move? And they basically said, look, you're the youngest guy in the company, man. You got to put your time in. 2 days later, I gave my 2 weeks notice. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I started with a startup company that had 3 individuals in the logistics and transportation industry, selling a product to Warner and Swift and JB Hunt, all the big trucks. So I had to learn a new industry, but I picked up the phone 300 times a day, and I created opportunities. I was there for about 2.5 years, and through that, met the best man at my wedding, met my wife, now wife, and learned a lot. I left there, went to what I thought was a safe company. It was a larger company, 6-figure sales job. I'm just newly married, got no kids at the time. Have 3 now, but I had no kids at the time. And man, life was good, but I got into this company, and about 18 months in, I was fired along with the rest of the sales team. And I was like, man, what's going on? Well, basically they had a private equity company come in, and they were cutting expenses. And so gone. Well, at this point I had read 750 books. I had been writing religiously, just book summaries and learning, because one of my top talents is learner. It is input. So I do like to ingest a lot of information, but then I like to share that information and hopefully ways that people can make themselves better. And my wife said, look, I 100% am behind you. You go and do what you want to do. So I found out that I was unemployable. So I started 2 companies. Well, really one company, and I'll talk about the other. I started a sales consulting company. So I grabbed Inc.'s fastest growing 5,000 list. I called the first 2,000, and I got 3 full-time sales consulting clients paying me more money than I had ever thought about. Right. I made $5.15 an hour when I was 15 years old. That was minimum wage. I was billing $250 an hour as a sales consultant. What was I doing? Making cold calls, setting up CRM systems, flying to Orlando, Florida, pitching their products, doing whatever they needed me to do. Then about the same time, one of my buddies calls me and says, hey, I just landed a $50 million fund here in Kansas City, and my head of acquisitions just left. I need somebody to fill this role. So I also started as the head of acquisitions for a $50 million fund. 6 months in, I had done 10 to 12 transactions per month. These guys were buying single family homes at scale. And I had these 3 sales consulting clients. Well, one of my wife's top talents is strategic. And she said, hey, I'm really impressed with what you've been able to do, but you need to focus. And all you do is complain about the sales consulting. And all you do is talk about real estate. So I ended up finishing this fund up about 265 homes. We were the 6th group in the country to go through a CoreVest portfolio refinance program. And I was really interested in how the two sponsors returned 85% of the capital to their investors and was still cash flowing in really good single family homes in good areas in Kansas City. And so they mentioned the syndication model and that they had raised a fund, and I didn't know what that meant. I mean, I'm just a vendor out there hustling, getting deals off Craigslist, walking neighborhoods, doing whatever I need to do. 3 feet of snow, I'm out there in the boots, going and seeing houses, making sure that we get our first offer in. That gave me a lot of confidence, but it also gave me a lot of perspective on what it takes. And so I went back to the broker I was working with and said, "Hey, I'd like to do this, but on multifamily and commercial." And he said, "Look, that's not what I do." And so, you might get your butt beaten out there in the marketplace. You're going to be playing with the big boys. I said, "All right, well, here's my 2 weeks again." And so I start, multifamily and commercial brokerage. I start representing 1031 exchange buyers. Again, the brokers I was working for said, "Hey, don't work with buyers. It's going to be a waste of your time." 12 months in, outsold the rest of the company combined, did that again, and said, "I think I'm onto something here. I really understand acquisitions. I understand buyer psychology, and I understand how to find deals." And so I started to purchase some real estate myself. And guys, I mean, up until this point, anything I had done had turned to gold. I had the Midas touch, right? And so I bought some deals that were heavy value add construction, redevelopment, historic readaptive use projects, and I lost my tail and had to write a $250,000 check on one of those deals, and sat back with my mentors and said, "Where'd I go wrong?" They said, "Look, you got to look at real estate as a business. Right now, you're looking at it like a producer. And there's a lot of aspects to real estate that you're missing that you need to go find." So I took a couple more years and found some business partners. So this is fast forward to 2018, 2019, and we start buying some multifamily projects together. And going then, what we all know what happened in March of 2020. So going into March of 2020, we had $35 million worth of shopping centers under contract, and then poof, those just fell apart like it was one day they were there, one day they weren't.
I'm going to stop you here for a second. First of all, we've never had anybody on our show where they've talked so much because it's so interesting, right? We don't want to stop you. I think there's so many nuggets that you're giving to our investors and our readers. And first of all, kudos to you, just because your life journey seems to have so many ups and downs, but you took the plunge and you never said no to anything, right? You just kind of kept moving forward and forward, which is amazing, right? Because that growth mindset, you developed it when you were 15 years old. I mean, you said that, right? I mean, your first job getting $5 an hour and just kept on going and going. So kudos to that, because a lot of people would just say, look, I'm going to quit, right? I'm okay just getting a 8 to 5, 40 hours a week job and, making whatever you're making and kind of being safe. And you kept on challenging yourself. So good job on that. I think that there's a lot that, us, Param and I, and our investors can kind of learn from that.
I was just going to echo that, Rav. Like, I mean, what I've seen is, we've talked to a number of people on our podcast, and what strikes me most about you, Logan, is like your story is almost like 5 or 6 people that we've talked to, like their stories, but like condensed, right? Like they've done this in 30 years or they've done this in 40 years. And you've talked about various aspects of your journey. And I'm like, that seems like 5 lives condensed into, you're still a young dude. So a condensed thing where you've seen all of those. And the thing that I take away is the determination, right? And I think that you get that from your mom, right? Like I talk about my parents and the inspiration that I get from their work ethic, coming from another country and coming here with nothing and then just saying, hey, I got to make it work. I got to put food on the table. I got to do whatever I need to do. And you had that same mindset from your mom. And, no matter what was put in front of you, you're like, one, I'm going to do it and I'm going to knock it out of the park. And when I get a wall placed in front of me, I'm going to be like, I'm going to tear down that wall or move somewhere else, right? And find something else that's going to be greater and better. And so that's the takeaway that I took from everything that you were explaining. And so that determination factor is huge. And again, we talk about, being safe and not taking risks versus taking an action, even when you don't have all the cards in front of you, and like, hey, I'm going to do this and I'm going to figure out how to make it work for me. And that's kind of what I took back from, from you. Sorry, Rav.
I think we echo the same thing. So very curious to see. I know you were just kind of leading to it. What you're doing today, right, versus what you've done in the last 5-10 years. Tell us about that a little bit. How did you get to what you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. So after losing some investor money and really, well, my money, I paid back the investor the $250,000. But I said I think that we need to look at real estate as the Japanese have a mental model called ikigai, and it's a Venn diagram which basically helps you understand where you can operate out of your sweet spot, which is your greatest passion and your greatest strength, right? And so I took that model and then I overlaid that into commercial real estate and said, what are all of the functions that are inside of commercial real estate? And what I've learned is communicating, but also taking ideas that seem complex and making them simple for other individuals to understand are two of my strengths. And so a real estate syndication, you can pull up a underwriting model and get really confused really fast. And so what are the things on that people need to be thinking about, right? So taking those complex, scenarios and making them more simple. And so I, found some business partners and we started to buy real estate. Well, during COVID, being in Kansas City where we wanted to invest, people were not able to get on airplanes. And this was kind of an inflection point where, everybody was tracking, are people going to make rental payments? Everybody had the National Multifamily Housing Council rent payment tracker up, looking at that every single day, right? Well, I, thought, okay, I think that, people still need a place to live. Affordable housing is still extremely important in the United States, and this isn't going to go anywhere. And frankly, that was when the interest rates dropped to near nothing. And so we had this kind of inflection point of, oh my goodness, people can't come compete on these deals. We can operate them and find them here locally. Let's go do multifamily. So that kind of was our opportunity, and we made a big splash. We were able to close on about 1,500 multifamily apartment units across 4 states: Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, and Iowa. And so that was about 18 months ago. Now it's a completely different ballgame, right? We could spend a whole episode just talking about the changes the last 4 years in commercial real estate. It's been no simple market to navigate, and it still isn't. But in the peaks and the valleys are opportunities. And so, yeah, but we started to say, okay, I think we're going to step out of multifamily for now and just let our portfolio do what it's doing. And we've learned what we like to do and what we don't like to do, but let's step back into this commercial space that we were going to be doing pre-COVID. And so since then, we have found another imbalance where the physical demand side of commercial real estate, let's call it industrial and retail, for some reason, there was a point of time where the capital markets demand was not there, even though the physical demand was. So we found an opportunity in that, especially in the neighborhood retail shopping center space. And so we have been able to add about 600,000 square feet of commercial space to our portfolio over the last 2 years. So that kind of spans 5 shopping centers, 1 industrial building that I spoke to you guys about previously, and then an office building that I'm sitting in right now that we renovated and leased up. So I think that where we're at now was, oh my gosh, last year was a really hard year for transactions, anywhere about down between 65 to 85%, comparatively speaking, to year over year, just on who you ask. And so, as a acquisition business, it's very difficult to have a team of 35 individuals, as we did, not doing any real estate deals. We bought 1 real estate deal last year. Because a mentor told me real estate deals are like the bus. There's another one every single 15 minutes. You just have to wait. And so don't get ahead of your skis a little bit. And so where we're at now is hoping and praying that this year provides us more opportunities in the commercial space. And we're actually on the verge of disposing of a lot of those deals that were bought in 2019 and 2020, because we did one thing really well, and it was put fixed rate assumable debt on them. And so we are sitting on about 1,000 units that have interest rates around 4% that can be assumed by buyers. And that is an extreme a benefit to our investors and ourselves sitting in today's market. So we're disposing of some of the Class C multifamily that we bought early on, that we have done some business plan implementation on. We are looking at continuing to grow the commercial portfolio. And then a big focus of mine, because I do think that transactions are going to come back this year on the brokerage side, is really solidifying. We're top 25 commercial real estate firm in Kansas City, but I want to be top 10. And so how can I add the right people with a unique value proposition here with a buy-side focus to develop the best buy-side brokerage in Kansas City for 1031 exchange clients, for first-time apartment buyers, and for neighborhood shopping center owners. So those are kind of the things that we're focused on doing right now. Now, we're sitting here, 12 months from now, and I might look at you guys and we do another episode, say, well, transactions didn't come back, so what did you do? And that might be a really interesting conversation, but that's what I'm hopeful for this year.
But I think what the takeaway that I get again from that is that, the space that we're in, and we've had to do the same thing, right? Like we were very, very heavy on multifamily, but we had to reassess. And the market is a changing, it's a living organism, right? And so you have to reassess, you have to be flexible enough to pivot, right? And know where that pivot is, like where's the opportunity? Because in every market, ups and down, like you've said, it peaks and valleys, there is opportunity. And so, we did the same thing. We pivoted to, self-storage. We pivoted to industrial. We pivoted to land development. Again, bringing diversity, bringing, opportunity to investors that, may not have seen it last year in multifamily, right? So, but as an acquisition shop, right? Somebody whose investor growth and our personal growth is through acquisitions and through transactions. That's what we had to do. And so anybody that can do that and step out of that, again, you learn something, but if you stay in that fixed mindset to say, this is all I know, then, eventually that's going to teeter out. And so constantly being able to learn new things, do new things, and see opportunity where others may not, that's where I see success happening. The second thing that I'll mention is we talk to people all the time that want to get into in investing in an active way, more so than what they're doing in their day job or whatever. But one thing that people don't realize is that not every aspect of investing and being active in these types of transactions is for everybody. For example, like me, I found out very, very quickly, Rav and I found out very, very quickly that we are not ones to purchase property and then manage property and do all of the ins and outs of property management. Like we learned that we've done it, but we learned very quickly that that's not for us, right? And so people have to understand that it takes a plethora of skills, right, to really do everything that you need to do from a commercial real estate perspective, and it's not for everybody. So finding suits you and your skill set is really big. And sometimes, like in your case, it took kind of a nudge from your wife, right, to say like, hey, you're doing this sales thing and you're doing this thing, but you seem miserable when you're talking about this and you're excited when you talk about real estate. So sometimes it takes a self-awareness, but sometimes it takes, somebody else to kind of peer in and say, look, this corporate lifestyle, for example, for me was really weighing me down, right? That, yeah, I was climbing the ladder, but that's really taking away from my joy and my life and what I wanted to be able to achieve. So having that self-awareness, or at least having a partner like Rav or my wife or your wife, right, to kind of point that out, to be able to look at things in a slightly different way and get out of that fixed mindset. That's a huge benefit, right, towards growth, towards personal growth. So that's another thing that I kind of wanted to unpack from your story as well.
Yeah, well, I think the one book that really helped me with this was Ryan Holiday's In My Study of the Stoicism Philosophy. And one of his books is called Ego is the Enemy. And early on as an athlete, if you cannot be coached, you're only going to rise to a certain level. Every great athlete, think about Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, they had a coach for their body, their mind. They had a chef that was cooking for them. They had all of these things so they could just focus on one thing, getting better at their endeavor, right? And so you have to be humble enough to be coached and or take feedback and the only thing that's standing in the way of that is your own ego. And that was a big thing for me to learn.
Excellent. I think that's so awesome. Param, you said just a few minutes ago about success, right? I mean, success is simple, but it's not easy, right? You have to work on it. You have to understand it. You have to live through it, right? And
Yes.
sometimes you're going to fail. Sometimes you're going to fail forward, as we kind of talked about. But it is simple. It's not easy, and so we have to work through it. So, Logan, tell us. In the intro, Par mentioned that you're also in the commercial brokerage world, right?
Yes.
And so, in the commercial brokerage world, what are you, except for apartments? On the commercial side, tell us about 1031 and why people do 1031s. Just maybe you can explain it in the next 2-3 minutes, just so people kind of understand the opportunity.
Well, what I found was a weird inflection in the commercial real estate market. If you are a person who bought a piece of real estate for a business purpose, and prime example, I had a gym owner who contacted me. He bought his gym, but next to it was a self storage facility. Well, he needed to put gym equipment in the self storage facility, so he bought the self storage facility and stored his equipment in it. And somebody came along and said, "Hey, I'm going to give you a four cap for your self storage facility." He goes, "What? Okay, yes, take it." And then he finds me through a podcast and calls me and says, "I'm not a real estate investor. I'm a gym owner, but I have a 1031 exchange coming up. I need help to understand what this means." And so the easiest way that I say this is basically with a 1031 exchange, you're kicking the can down the road in regards to recapitalizing on your depreciation and the taxes that are owed. Now, you kick it long enough and you can win the game. So there are other strategies for people to think about, but with the 1031 exchange, I identified these folks as my ideal customer profile because they needed my help to find a property, to understand if it was a good investment, to put a team in place on the management side, to find a lender, to find insurance, to find an attorney to help them. And so I crafted this whole process, brought this team to this individual and said, "Look, you can go do this yourself, but if you're going to try to work with a broker, they don't like to work necessarily with a new buyer, so to speak. So help me bring you more credibility, right? So let me offer up these services, put your LOI on my thing, and my branding. They know me, and hopefully we can get a transaction done. And I'll help you get everything in place that you need." And that turned out to be a really interesting model for first time or 1031 exchange clients that had not done that previously. And so basically, a 1031 exchange is your ability to take your capital gains and roll them into a like kind property. And it has to have the same amount of debt, if not more, and it has to be more expensive than the property that you were selling. And so that it does have some limitations. You have 45 days to identify 3 properties after you close on your previous property. And then you have 180 days to close on one of those 3 properties. So there is a time intensive kind of component to this as well of needing to identify. And those 45 days go very fast. So I helped a lot of clients identify those properties and close on those properties. And in the marketplace, helping individuals with a successful transaction and making them feel like they had a financial planner, but as a real estate broker was something that was non-existent. So that's where we come into play. We try to build long-term relationships with these individuals and say, "We'll bring the team. You tell us what you need. We'll bring out what the market can bring, and here you go." And out of that, we've done probably 60 to 70 of these transactions now. And we've only had one time where a client said, "Well, I can't identify anything. We can't find it because the markets just aren't participating." Right? I mean, it was very difficult in some of those periods of time that we've had to go to a DST type of investment for them. But we also work with a lot of those providers too.
Yeah, so not only are you, obviously providing the service, but you're also educating your clients, and hopefully these are the guys that are going to stay with you, because if they're true investors, they're probably buying and selling, upsizing their portfolio, and as that happens, I mean, that's your lifeline in regards to your brokerage business. So yeah, good job on that. Yes, you're doing commercial real estate from a brokerage side. You're still doing syndication, and obviously market's changing, so you're kind of just seeing where things are going to be. Any other focus for this year for 2024 in regards to investing or in regards to real estate?
I've had to make the shift from a producer to a leader. And that is one of the levers that Naval Ravikant speaks about in his book or his tweet storms, right? Is leverage. And people are one of those levers. And so something I am focused on is making sure that I'm staying in my sweet spot that I mentioned previously, but also stepping more into this leadership role and helping other people identify where their sweet spots are and then figuring out if there's a spot for them on the team that I'm creating. And so I would love to add 2 to 3 more A players that are really looking to learn the commercial real estate space and help us to continue to expand. So something I'm really working on is 2 things: leadership, but also copywriting. I've learned that through LinkedIn, if you can influence and stop somebody from scrolling, which 6 years ago I had 1,000 followers and now I have 24,000 followers on LinkedIn because I post every single day almost, except for Sundays because I take Sundays off. But that is another skill set that I'm trying to really understand and learn, is the value of writing in a way that influences people and gets them to stop, not just for LinkedIn, but for marketing materials, for offering memorandums, for investor communications, all of those things.
Well, that's great. So so as we wrap up, I wanted to give you an opportunity, one, just to kind of, again, we talked about your story. We talked about, some of the folks that you listen to on CDs, not podcasts, but, we look for sources of education. We look for sources of inspiration. So I want to give you an opportunity to kind of, folks that may be early in their journey, right? As looking at real estate, looking at investing. Any final thoughts, any words of wisdom, any nuggets that you want to share with them, as we wrap up today? And then secondly, anybody that wants to connect with you directly, what's the best way to connect with you on your various, kind of platforms as well?
Absolutely. Zig Ziglar, one of the guys I had CDs for him, he said, you need to move from being a wandering generality to a meaningful specific. And the only way that you can do that is to get clear. You got to get clear on what you're trying to accomplish. You need to have a plan. You got to get clear on your goals, financially, physically, relationally, spiritually, all of those things. And if you're not clear on what you're trying to accomplish, then any road is going to get you there. So get clear on what you're trying to accomplish and then start to continue to listen to the Spur Equity podcast, and other podcasts are going to help you to draft what that strategy actually looks like. There are experts out there. What other time in life can you listen to free podcasts and get probably a better, knowledge base than I got spending $50,000 on an MBA for 2 years, right? Like it's unbelievable out there. So you have to get clear on what you're trying to accomplish. There's plenty of goal setting, methodologies out there, but find one that resonates with you. And then if you're looking to connect, I love connecting with individuals, especially talking about Midwest real estate. That is kind of my main focus. I love trying to just connect people. One thing that's really fun is opportunities do not float out there within, just in thin air. They're always connected to somebody. So always love to chat with individuals. But my LinkedIn, Logan Freeman, Mr. Kansas City, you can find me there. I engage with a lot of people on LinkedIn. And then from there, you can get to a website that I have a lot of different content on, and that's ftwinvestmentsllc.com. And on the brokerage side, that's exchangecre.com. And that's where I hang out all the time, LinkedIn and in those 2 places. So hopefully I can connect with some individuals.
Great. Thanks, Logan. And with what you shared, I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, the amount of content that is out there and knowledge that is out there and people willing to share. That's what I love about this industry, that people are so willing to share their trials, their tribulations, their challenges, their successes with everybody else, so that we can learn from each other. Why learn from your own mistakes when you can learn from somebody else's, right? And do things better. And that's our goal as well, right? Like, I wish somebody would have told me some of the things that we now share 10, 15, 20 years ago, so I could have made better choices and get set up right. So, but yeah, I mean, I highly encourage people to continue, educating themselves, learning from people like you. And yeah, we live in an age of, a lot of content and a lot of knowledge, but it's also abundance from a wealth perspective that we can all stand to benefit from these transactions. And there's enough out there for all of us to kind of get attached to, right? And invest together rather than compete. So I love that aspect of commercial real estate as well.
Guys, and the time to start is now, today, right? I mean,
Today.
there's no better time than today. You are getting encouraged. We basically just are offering this to you as an advice. Go and start reading books, start reading the books that, Logan just gave you. Listen to all these podcasts that are free. I mean, that's content. Even if you get one source of idea, one source of direction, one source of just positivity, share that with others. And then, who knows where life can take you. We all kind of came from different backgrounds and we were all doing different things. Logan, your story, Param, your story, my story, it doesn't start with real estate. It started somewhere else, but it led us to real estate. That wasn't something that was designed for us. It's something that kind of led us here because of curiosity, because of being open-minded, because of understanding that there's more to it than what I'm doing in my life at this point. So kudos to, I think, everybody. Start today and start learning and start implementing. That's the story that I'm hearing today.
Absolutely. Well, that's great, man. That's all the time that we're going to have today. But Logan, I want to really thank you for sharing your story, diving deep. It really, truly inspirational, to see what you've done and what you continue to do. And yes, I definitely want to have you back on the show, on the podcast, and see where 2024 is taking you as well.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
Awesome. That's great, man. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in today to the episode of Spur Your Wealth podcast. Again, we are your hosts, Param Singh and Rav Singh from Spur Equity. Remember that your journey to financial freedom begins with both knowledge and action, where knowledge is power,
but action is superpower. So until then, happy investing. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Spur Your Wealth podcast. We hope you enjoyed the valuable insights and inspiration. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and stay updated on future episodes filled with actionable tips and strategies.
If you want more information about our investment projects, visit us at spurequity.com. If you have an inspiring story to share and would like to be a guest on our podcast, email us at podcast@spurequity.com. Until next time, happy investing.